I was down, but now I'm up. Yeah, this all God, this ain't no luck. Yeah.
Well, I guess first, before we get into some of the great research you've done, and I'm sure there's a plethora of ideas that you want to talk about, and we might not even get to all of them because there's probably likely too many. What do you think about the current market where it's at right now? And or the CPI print that we just had and how the markets love that. I mean, this thing is just a runaway train, low volume, just slowly melting its way up higher, all-time highs today. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this for the last couple weeks. And, it's interesting. So, inflation came in, it's still what, 3.4% growth rate in the US. Expectations were what, 3.5%. PPI came in a little bit hotter than expected on the opposite end for businesses. And what I've really been thinking about, and I actually outlined this in pretty great detail in my recent report release on NVDA, is that businesses are still kind of teetering on new investments for technology, but we're kind of at that point where we're starting to see more migration to generative AI, use of AI and automation for business optimization and things like that. And I kind of changed a little bit of my thesis because of this on the broader economy, where, my presumption is we're still going to see tremendous inflationary pressures on the business end. So, raw materials I expect are going to continue to climb, especially as producers keep those markets substantially tighter than they had historically. The whole theme of produced meat demand still stands across virtually every commodity. So that's kind of a given in my thesis. But with the assistance of business automation, it may not be great as far as job security goes. You're going to see a lot of cuts on administrative tasks, things like that, whether those people get redirected to other departments or we see headcount reductions. But I anticipate that with the utilization of automation, we might see less of those inflationary pressures that are brought onto businesses pass through to the consumer as a result. Because my expectation right now is that consumers are pretty stretched thin as far as cost of living goes. We're seeing inflation rates pretty damn elevated on daily cost of living. That includes like food, beverage, housing and rent, utilities, gas, gasoline, and things of that sort. And I mean, I don't know if you were just at Costco today. I was just at Costco today, and I did my big Costco trip earlier in the week, but I forgot to buy eggs, of course, so had to go back and I ended up leaving with basically a new wardrobe. They had 3 packs of Banana Republic t-shirts for like $20. They had nice running shoes for 20 some bucks. It's like, man, I'm going to take advantage of this. I bargain shop when I go clothes shopping, and that's a good deal right there when I see it. But you know uh looking at budgetary pressures on just food in general, I was in Houston last week, visiting my family, picking up a new car. uh I don't know if we talked about this on the last podcast. My Equinox was totaled, parked on the street while I was on the tarmac coming back from Houston on my last trip. So I flew down there, bought a new Chevy Colorado, and drove that thing back up here last week. And I don't eat out a lot. I cook my own food. I'm on that strict meal plan. Well, not right now, but I cook primarily just about all my food, with a few exceptions. But going out to eat with the family, a lot of it was Tex-Mex barbecue, and I was appalled at how much more expensive dining out is. Like a meal that would normally cost maybe 12, 15 or so bucks, you're now paying like 23, $25 for. It's like, what the hell? Our total bill came out to like 100 something bucks. And I remember, a couple years ago, this is dating life. You'd pay for maybe 2, 3 drinks a piece, a meal a piece, maybe an appetizer. It came out to maybe like what, 65, 70 bucks. And it's
Yeah.
just egregious now.
Yeah.
Even getting a margarita, basic contents, agave, tequila, lime. You're paying 15 bucks for a, $10 drink. So it's just getting expensive. So I expect that most consumers are feeling pretty stretched now. I'm not the typical consumer. Before we hopped on, we were talking about what's that game? Gears of War or
Skyrim, Elder Scrolls.
Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls. And I'm just like, I've never played that game in my life. I know a guy that played it, and that's about the extent of my knowledge of the game. I'm
Yeah.
not the person to ask about pop culture or, what people do. I'm like the definitely not
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah.
I
No,
watch a movie when it's like 5 years out on Netflix.
yeah. Yeah. I'm getting more like that. I've been bad. I haven't even seen the new Dune yet. Although
Oh yeah, that's right.
I do in my peripherals watch a lot of people play the new games and have like am aware. I don't play as much as I used to for sure. We're back when I used to um be in college and procrastinate as I was very, very good at. um, but yeah, so getting back to the oh, by the way, Skyrim's like my favorite game ever. I've probably spent just as much time modding that game as I have played it. But I
Circling back.
yeah. Back to what's important. Skyrim, amazing game. And they're probably gonna ruin the next one, and I'm upset
I need
because
to revisit RuneScape.
I set time aside from our important jobs of keeping track of the market and everything else going on. And I was like, I'm going to play the new Starfield game. And it was so bad, I couldn't even enjoy like 40 minutes of it. I was like, this is trash. I'm done.
Is
But
that the
then,
one where you have like an encamp or like a village or whatever, and you build factories and you build warships and go attack other people's villages?
no, this one's like
Or I'm thinking StarCraft.
yeah, you are. Yeah,
Oh,
StarCraft
right.
is that. Well, I mean, StarCraft has cool tech though. We're gonna get way off track though if we start talking about that. StarCraft is like a 30-year video game project. Actually, one of our members in the at Nobel Trading is a VIP member of that game. And one of the cool things that game does, if you spend enough money on cosmetics or different stuff for the game, is if you ask something in customer support, you'll actually get like near real time answers. Like they will actually reach out. I just it's unlike any other game ever. It's a very interesting thing. I think that's probably where video games are headed, and they're just like way, 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 way further ahead of everyone else. They also, yeah, they've had some nice innovations for that company, especially when it comes to yeah, player environments being seamlessly integrated across multiple servers, which means that you can have like a full like universe in the game and not have loading screens ever, which is huge for player experience. And that's probably the future of like metaverse and stuff. Them figuring that out actually helps the entire space, helps metaverse and stuff. I bet Zuckerberg's at home just beating himself off to the idea that that's a thing now. But
So the key
we might have to cut that.
the key is spend enough money and you get good customer service.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. That probably does apply to pretty much everything, but
Oh yeah, if you go to
yeah.
Vegas, sit down at a slot machine, tip the bar cart girl like a 20 and she will be back on you like that. Like
Oh yeah.
pro tip. But yeah, getting back to inflation.
Yeah.
So,
So right. Uh,
so yeah,
uh,
um
just for me to try and summarize, correct me if I'm wrong on your expectations. It sounds like you think businesses are definitely going to have more pressures as there is some scarcity in raw materials as everyone's rushing to build the infrastructure necessary for AI. You're also seeing weakness in the consumer, though, which might cause CPI to maybe come down a bit in the future.
Potentially, that's not set in stone
Right,
because there are implications that are coming into play that may backtrack this. So nothing goes straight up, nothing goes straight down.
right,
And inflationary pressures in aggregate, I mean, we're looking at like hundreds and thousands of data points that are
right,
all aggregated together to come up with one number. Nothing goes straight up or straight down. And my expectations is this isn't a win. This is just a short term, like slower growth period. But if you look at some of the challenges going back to AI and scaling, so my core thesis on Oracle Corp, and this applies to the other hyperscalers, which I still haven't spent a lot of time on, like Microsoft, Amazon, Google. But if you look at these firms, they're sprouting up data centers like it's their job because it is their job. And my core thesis, or part of that core thesis with NVIDIA, is that each of these hyperscalers are going to continue to invest on the fastest, latest, and greatest, better energy efficient chips like the H200 that's going to be coming into play in second quarter. And, you know, on that note of power consumption, these data centers are massive power consumers. And discussing last podcast, uranium plays, this could be the strategy for SMR, small nuclear reactors or small modular reactors. You
right.
have a dedicated reactor per data center because of the mass amount of power consumption.
And
And if that doesn't happen, utilities and consumers are going to experience some massive energy costs.
right. And I mean, that's so right. And I feel like we've been talking about this for a minute, and now the mainstream narrative. And you don't read as much stuff as I read, but I'm nearly permanently online, and so I'm watching the
Let's
narrative
step back. I don't read
slowly
as much
swap
stuff
over.
that you read,
Yeah.
but I still read a shit ton of
Oh,
stuff.
that's true. That's true. You read you
Just different
okay.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You're like the nerd at the library who's like going through the encyclopedia, and I'm like the guy in the comic book section.
Just want to
Scrolling
make sure
through.
people don't see me as a
Yeah.
giant meathead.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, yeah. I'm scrolling through X, just triggering myself as I read all the dumb things that people post. But one of
Oh my
the,
God.
you're seeing that not only are people like Bloomberg and New York Times putting out positive nuclear articles, but even Germany made a statement, France made a statement. These environmentalists are getting the backhand that they should have gotten maybe 5 years ago. Um, that they need to get their act together and realize that, hey, if you want infinite robots and AI, you're going to need to embrace nuclear. And now everyone's realizing that it's a good AI play. And I even went back and reread and did a short on your great article for UEC, and kind of read through my own research too, because there's a few other uranium plays even way back when we talked about the small Australian miner.
Oh yeah.
I
And
went
I
through all of
flip-flopped on
those.
UEC recently too.
Yeah. Oh, you did.
Not to cut your video short, but I did flip-flop on UEC. And
Yeah.
there is a reason behind it. So I'm still extremely bullish on nuclear, but UEC,
Yeah.
I I just like reading more into it. I have a problem with the company because they've doubled their
Fearless.
share count in the last 2 years.
Right.
They've raised equity. They just burned through so much cash, and they're promising to spin up their mines in, what is it, August 2024.
Right.
While you have Energy Fuels, ticker Quad U, as well as Boss Energy. I think it was BQSSF. It's one of the Australian firms, but they're kind of cool. Definitely check out that report. But like you have these two firms, they are bringing mines up to production. They actually have started producing. They're interchanging inventory, things of that sort, and they're actually bringing uranium to market. They're securing long-term SPA, sales purchase agreements, as well as market tied, so tied to spot market to a certain degree, contracts. While UEC kind of sits around, they're talking up a game. They're planning on, bringing their mines, ramping their mines up. But like one of the biggest challenges I have with them is that they maybe they just haven't publicized it or what it is, but they haven't like run full on tests to have any proved and probable reserves for uranium.
Yeah,
So it's kind of,
you also mentioned that in your original reports as well. Like they haven't actually I can't remember what it's called when they assess how much of the obtainable uranium there actually is on site.
yeah. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
proved and probable and measured and indicated.
yeah.
And I mean, I might need to be corrected if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong, but I believe measured and indicated is like an internal test.
Mm-hmm.
They just say, hey, we think there's this much uranium in the ground. We're proved and probable. You have a third party, scientific research analysis. They actually do their own assessment. They do their PV10, their present value 10 analysis on the valuation of the minerals in the ground. So it's like without this, there's no verification or validation. You're just taking management's word for it and assuming that they're not just talking up their game to raise equity, to bolster their share price, raise capital, and line their pockets. And I mean, like looking at their compensation, they're pretty average, I want to say. Like they're not overzealous on cash comp, but when you include like stock options, stock grants, all this other shit, it's like these guys are, I don't know. I don't want to put any ideas into their head because I might be completely off, but I think they're in the business of giving people the runaround and lining their pockets while, investors pump money into the stock and, inevitably lose.
There's a
Again, I could
fair
be
amount of
completely off the ball.
yeah, there's a fair amount of that. The skepticism is good and necessary. But at the same time, I just think of it as like a trend. As a trader, I just also just still think of it as a trend trade. So
Oh yeah, no,
there might be,
absolutely.
yeah, there's the hype around it. If they talk a good book and they're good at making some money and planning their pockets, I'm gonna line my pocket while they're at it.
Oh, dude,
That's
absolutely.
yeah. So
And
yeah,
as a proxy for uranium spot, it trades just about in line with uranium spot prices.
yeah.
So, if you're looking to get as close to trading uranium futures as you want, just because of how thin of a market uranium spot is, it's more of a physical holding than, like oil futures and gas futures and things like that, just because of, it's not really used by the mining firms or the utilities as a benchmark per se. But
yeah.
if you're looking to take advantage, UEC would be a good trade just based on that trend.
Now, I will say, and for those who are unaware, of course, all Discord members can see my long-term portfolio and everything that's in it. But the only one that's actually in my core positions right now is CCJ. Have you taken a look at them in recent? Do you have any thoughts on them?
I'd have to update. It's been probably a quarter or two since I've reviewed CCJ, Cameco, but from what I remember about them, a lot of their capacity is locked up in SPAs, so they may not realize the same cash flow as a firm that might be more exposed to spot prices. So if you're looking for long-term durability, CCJ would be a great firm to invest in. If you're looking for, that advantageous or opportunistic firm that's going to, seek out that stability with some SPAs, but also balance it out with spot-based contracts. Energy Fuels, Quad U would be a great company to consider for that. Boss Energy, I believe they're looking to do something similar as well, but they're a bit newer. They're not as experienced. But actually, what's kind of cool about Boss Energy tying into the U.S. Uranium producers, they bought the it's Alta Mesa. They bought the Alta Mesa assets, I think in a JV. I can't remember what percentage they own of the equity, but they bought some of the Alta Mesa assets down in South Texas. So they have assets, they have uranium assets on Australia, they have uranium assets down in South Texas, and I believe they have a processing facility in South Texas as well.
Is that like one of 4 companies to have uranium assets in Texas? How much?
Something like that.
How
Yeah.
much uranium's in Texas?
Oh, there's what's
I
called the
didn't no
uranium
clue.
belt, man. It's like, yeah, it's
Oh,
a
really?
big deal.
Okay, I didn't know this. Okay, yeah,
I think it coincides with like how shale form how the formations of shale occur. I don't know the science
Okay,
behind it. I'm just talking out my ass right now, but
yeah.
just given the geological effects of, you know, all the dinosaurs and shit that were under the earth. I don't know.
I was, I when I did my research, I only looked into. I was more when I first got into it. It was 2020, and I was studying like the supply chain, but I never bothered to read about the geolocation or where uranium is most likely to appear. So, but that's very interesting. So that's probably maybe a flaw in how I did my process. Not surprised you looked into that though.
All I know is Kazakhstan, Australia,
Yeah,
Russia, US, and Canada are the primary uranium guys or locations for uranium in
yeah,
the ground. United States, the closer my expectation is the closer you can get to the United States, because the US is the #1 nuclear power generator in the world by capacity. So, the closer you can get to the US, that shortens the supply chain. You have less regulatory challenges on importing uranium. I think it's the US is a little bit more lenient on, environmental restrictions in quotes, as you would see in Australia, where I don't know if they just have their heads up their asses, but they're so limiting on
everything.
digging out resources on everything. So
Yeah,
yeah, if you're in the US, you have good land, good resources and minerals, and you have approved capacity for sales, you're that's the golden ticket right there.
yeah. I think Australian media, just whatever. Australian politics are probably as bad, if not somehow worse than Canada right now. When it comes to stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't really unfortunate, but I think they'll be quicker to get themselves out of it. But
Let's
okay,
hope so. For the
let's
sake
hope
of
so.
natural gas production and sales, as well as uranium, let's sure hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, same issue with Canada. Canada could have made a fortune trying to help Europe out with their natural gas issues, and instead,
Oh, they'd rather help China.
yeah. Oh,
If
have they
you
been
if you
doing
look
that?
at the Yeah, so I can't remember what the facility is called, but I think it should be completed this year, if not already. There's a LNG export facility on the west coast of British Columbia up there, that the BC pipeline connects. Oh man, I can't remember the oil plays up there. It's been a couple months since I've reviewed, and they have some weird fucking Canadian names. Um, but anyways, there's a export facility up there that, it's bound for China. It's properly located to reach Chinese imports, and, you know, they just do not care about our politics or our policies. So yeah, they're big supporters up there.
I had no clue that any of that was going on.
Yeah, not to talk politics, but I mean Trudeau is about as communist as you can get for a Western president. So
Yeah,
I'm not
he,
surprised.
he is. He's a dirtbag. I'll
Oh,
say it.
big time.
Yeah,
Big
he's a
time.
complete dirtbag. By the way, UNG has actually not been on my radar, but this is actually At $17 on UNG, looks like it's headed for a breakout over 18. That's interesting. I might have to take another look at that when we're done here. So I want to circle back though, and I want to talk about probably the biggest thing that's going to be around the corner. That's probably going to make or break this breakout to all-time new highs, and that's going to be NVIDIA earnings later this month. Um, you know, I mean, my thoughts. You mentioned the H200. It's H200, right? The
Correct.
Blackwell chips. I think that those are going to be a huge driver. Where I think already we've seen some excitement. Have you seen have you seen uh the new features by OpenAI and Google?
I did read about it a little bit. The GPT 4.0.
4.0. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're already seeing that cause some hype, and then the market gets excited, and then CPI was okay, and now, I mean, Apple's on a massive tear right now. Stock is going parabolic because they have a deal. They're working on a deal, rumored. I think they'll get it done because what else are you gonna do, Apple? You're not freaking getting anywhere with your AI team, which I think is just a marketing or a sales team that's actually just been hired to get a deal with OpenAI. They're not doing anything themselves. So obviously they're going to be completely reliant on either OpenAI or Google. Probably don't want to rely on Google. It's going to be a huge mess of the economics to try and figure that out. So
Yeah, they'll choose Microsoft.
yeah, I think so as well. So, uh, but it is a super exciting. So if you've seen the video, the inflections with the AI are incredible. It's like actually talking to a person. The way you can also pull out your camera and then you can have it ask it a question about something that you're showing it through the camera and it will react. Google's new one actually will remember what you've previously recorded. So you could be driving around, you could be like, oh, way back there, that house, what color was it? And it will tell you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Or you could be like, hey, did you see my in the video, the example they used is a lady said, hey, do you remember where I put my glasses? And it was like, oh yeah, by the red apple. So that's incredible. And you could also like draw on the screen and then you can draw an arrow to if you can't describe what you're looking at, you can draw an arrow on the screen with your phone and then Google AI will tell you. But it doesn't sound as good. Google's AI
Mm,
still sounds like a robot. OpenAI's AI sounds like a person. The inflections of the voice, the tonality, it is absolutely mind-boggling how good of a job they did with that. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm sorry, I'm kind of derailing us, but I was just blown away. That is the hype I think people needed, though. And my big theory, I'm building to NVIDIA. Follow me there. I'm I'm thinking, in my opinion, that OpenAI won that. That was like a rap battle. That was like the tech nerd version of like Kendrick versus Drake diss tracks. I was like, OpenAI put out their diss track of like, check out how awesome ours is, and Google tried to respond, and Google failed. OpenAI's was better, in my opinion. OpenAI is Kendrick, and I think that even that, like Kendrick, OpenAI is purposely slowly letting out these. I mean, everything you hear from Altman is we're trying to be slow, we're trying to be careful, and I think he keeps saying that because he's like, what we have, we're afraid to release to the public. If you read every announcement, if you read everything, if you listen, not to what he says when he's on a podcast, but how he says it, how careful he's being. This dude is terrified to tell you what they're using back in the office as opposed to what the public's using. I've never got the feeling so strong that like they're scared to actually let the public know how developed this is really getting on their end with their tech. And I think that they're just going to continue to probably blow Google out of the water, which also has me inherently continue to be bullish on NVIDIA and SMCI and everything within the sector. So I'm thinking, as a trader who probably hasn't done a deep dive into NVIDIA to the extent you have, it's kind of in my peripheral. I have to keep an eye on it, of course. But as a trader, my expectation is, even if NVIDIA, which has to deliver probably exceptional, this whole earnings season, we've seen companies do well in earnings, but if guidance slips or isn't absolutely stellar, we get these massive sell-offs. I feel like even if you get that big sell-off on NVIDIA, you get probably a broader retracement in the market with it because it's king of the castle. There is probably people lined up down the block of Wall Street all the way out that are just like waiting for the opportunity to buy in, waiting for any sort of dip to come in and buy it. But
I
yeah,
agree, man.
yeah.
And circling back to GPT 4.0, let's just hope it just gets sentient, or
Dude,
even
yeah.
like if you think about it, like all these robocalls that you get on a daily basis, just being taken to the next level with GPT or Google's for that matter, and if it can remember things you said, your voice inflection, things like that, just imagine the degree of scams
Oh
and
yeah.
fraud and theft and all these things that can occur with these features.
One of our
Because
yeah, one of our full-time traders in the Discord used to do a call sales job. That's how he made most of his money. And he used to do, he's only by the phone sales. And we watched it together with the bunch of the community at the day it came out. We had everyone in there, had a little viewing party, and immediately he interrupts the video and he goes, guys, like, everyone I used to work with is going to lose their job. There's no way. Like, what we sold was so simple. It was like quick, punchy things. It's all about your tone. It's all about your inflection. It's all about just following the script of what you say. You memorized all these rebuttals. There's only like 100 you got to really memorize. An AI could easily do that. He's like, all those people are going to lose their jobs. And that is a huge part of some economies. I mean, that's a huge, huge part. Just poof. And the transition period, crazy. I'm sorry. I'm just so blown away by this. And I think some people are, they're scared, of course, of sentience. I'm not quite in that camp, but I understand it. Like I'm not. I would vote for AI for president. Over the options we have, let it do it. It's not. At least it can't be bribed. Because it doesn't care
oh,
about
that's
money.
that's what we know so far.
Oh yeah. True.
Or it could be the one bribing. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah, true. But I didn't think about that. But
Starts doing the Matrix deal, keeping people in capsules and turning them into battery fluid. You never know, man. You never know. They're
yeah,
tied for power, so
yeah.
they need us to generate electricity. And yeah, but anyways, going into NVIDIA a little bit. So we're about halfway through the year. Part of my first initial thesis on NVIDIA was you have Taiwan Semi that's doubling their COWS capacity, which is their manufacturing process for high powered chips like NVIDIA's H100 and H200. And part of my presumption is if you're a hyperscaler, your job is to be the fastest, most optimal and efficient data center on the block. If you fall behind the competitors for any reason, if you have an outage or you're just experiencing some lag time and compiling your data, you're going to start looking for the next hyperscaler to store your stuff at and use for these applications. So my presumption based on that is when H200 comes out, later in Q2 fiscal second quarter, we're going into the fiscal first quarter 25 next week for them. They're kind of wonky on, they're not aligned with the calendar year, but when we run into second quarter, they'll start shipments for the H2. And my presumption is you're going to have hyperscalers that are just going to be hopping on these things. They're going to be ordering them up, buying them up. And, come the turn of the year, the calendar year, you're going to have twice as much capacity available to, continue building and improving your data centers.
CWR Private Client Group was voted Best Financial Advisor by St. Louis Magazine. They have been helping individuals and small business owners achieve financial success through innovative financial strategies for over 18 years. CWR Private Client Group, creating and preserving wealth.
So doubling capacity over at Taiwan Semi. So going on the presumption that hyperscalers need to be the fastest and most readily available data center on the block to remain competitive, they're going to be buying up these H200s at the earliest convenience or earliest time possible whenever they're available to the market. So that's the hyperscaler side of it. The other side is on the enterprise side, where I kind of have an expectation that enterprises are pulling back on investing in building out their own internal data centers, and they'll be leveraging hyperscalers and cloud-based software until they can internally develop their own generative AI applications and things of that sort, which, that takes headcount, that takes a lot of OpEx. And my presumption is CEOs, CIOs are looking to keep costs relatively flat to down for the year. So I expect not a whole lot of investment at the enterprise side going into the end of the calendar year. I do expect it to inevitably ramp up, just not quite yet. So I believe once we get to a certain point, we're going to see the hyperscalers migrate over to the H200s. Then at a certain point, it could be next year, it could be the following year. The enterprises will start catching up and developing their own internal infrastructure for developing their own internal generative AI applications. So once this happens,
are we would an appropriate metaphor or analogy to use for this be like we're in the early days of cell phones, where we are probably going to likely see big advancements year over year, and at some point we'll hit some sort of stalling where we kind of need some major scientific breakthrough or to the next to actually climb? Are we currently in that early phase where every single year you have to upgrade because the new phone has got this and this and this, and it's so much better that you can't be without it? Is that kind of what you're kind of saying right now? That's the type of consumer cycle we're looking at?
Exactly. At the hyperscaler level, in order to remain competitive, you have to have the fastest gear available, or you end up redundant. One of those old, what is it, direct air AC type data centers that it's just old technology. Nobody wants to. I'm trying to remember which company it was. It's some company based out of Houston. It's not Rackspace. It might be Rackspace, but it's like looking at Equinix or some of those guys. They were big. They built all these data centers, and then you have newer data centers come out, and suddenly these older data centers just drop in value because it's too expensive to upkeep and transition.
Yeah. So with some of those with NVIDIA, a lot of the companies pre-ordered this, right? Are those pre-orders already kind of priced into the stock, you think, or are already being reported on the last? When was our last earnings? I'm trying to think about the timeline for the announcement and then the actual last quarter, and I can't remember which came before the other.
For what?
For the new H200s.
Oh, gotcha. So yeah, I mean it was kind of in between when Blackwell was announced. So Q4, that was February-ish, and then not long after they did their big, what was it, an analyst day or whatever, where they announced their new line of products. So it was right after Q4 earnings that they made that big announcement. But or it might have been Q3. My timeline is terrible going back months. But I remember, or at least when I wrote my report, it was a couple weeks before they made that big announcement. I think I did Q4, or I might have done Q3. and then updated with Q4 figures. So it was between Q3 and Q4. That's right. Between
Okay.
Q3 and Q4 is when they made the announcement.
Okay.
But honestly, I don't think it's priced in yet. Like looking at analyst estimates, consensus looks pretty spot on, but looking at the range, it's just all over the place by like a deviation of 100 billion or something. Like it's like how are these figures so broad? Who's the mega bear on NVIDIA and why?
Well, I
And
remember. Okay, sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry, but
no, it's good.
I've been reading some of these bearish reports, and I remember there was one analyst who said that they were oh gosh, I don't want to mess this up. I don't remember the terminology that was being used, but they are saying this thesis was that NVIDIA was bumping their numbers because they were loaning the pre-orders to certain companies, which was then boosting their sales numbers. And this, so their claim was that NVIDIA was a giant bubble and a giant scam. And even though this practice is literally used by Microsoft, Apple, Google, like almost everyone does that for their clients. They give them these huge deliveries and then they don't have to pay up front. The company makes a loan and you slowly pay them back over time. But they were saying that NVIDIA was doing that into their chips. And so the bearish report was that this was all a big bubble and NVIDIA wouldn't be able to deliver on it. And they were boosting their numbers in the short term and it would drop off catastrophically. But
Yeah, that's totally normal. I mean, even in
it's normal
cybersecurity
practice.
platforms, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like going to buy a car. Most people aren't going to pay cash for a car. And now
Right.
multiply that by like, I don't know, 1,000 or 10,000. And there you got your NVIDIA infrastructure coming in. I mean, you're not buying a modular $20 chip. You're buying like how much does a GPU cost? Like 30 grand or 70 grand or something like that. I think it
Yeah.
was like 35 for one, and you're buying hundreds of these.
Yeah.
So like to make that kind of presumption, it's egregious and just flat out ignorant of how the industry works and what the actual costs of these products are. Like I was listening to the Q4 earnings call the other day, getting myself back up to speed in my rotation. And it's like, they're talking about the H100 and, the CEO, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, the CEO, he made the point that most people think these GPUs are just little semiconductor chips
Yeah.
when they're, and I'm kind of disappointed Seeking Alpha didn't use my original title. They used my alternate, but I called it the 70-pound elephant in the room. Like these GPUs are 70 pounds. These things are fucking huge.
Yeah.
Like they're not a small semiconductor that goes in your phone or your laptop. These are massive pieces of infrastructure, and you're buying thousands of these to run one supercomputer. So whoever this bearish analyst is, he just doesn't understand exactly what NVIDIA develops and, what the product actually is and what it's used for. Like, it's not a,
or
I
even
don't
the
know,
common
commoditized chip.
or even the common business practice of doing that. I can't remember
Or
what the
that financing, yeah.
yeah, financing. Yeah,
It's
there's a specific word for that, and I can't or phrase. I think it's 2 words. I cannot remember the full life of me. I feel like an idiot, but whatever. Moving on. Yeah, it's a lot of these mega bear cases, though, if you read through them, they're as absurd of that, which actually as absurd as that. And so that actually does, man, make me pretty bullish. And I think, yeah, man, this
yeah, if that's
conversation's
all you
almost
can
making
pick
me,
out.
yeah, this conversation's almost making me too bullish because my game plan for the other traders who are watching this was to probably strangle the video with options and earnings far out the money. I think we'll see what the market's pricing in. I could probably actually just look real quick and tell you what it's pricing in right now. But that's my game plan. This thing is always a huge mover. It's on the 22nd or 24th. I think it's 24th.
Yeah, it's coming up next
Yeah, you so
next
your
Wednesday,
pricing
Thursday.
as of today. Today's the 15th. right now the market's pricing in about a $50 move on the stock. So I mean, I doubt that move's only $50. So I mean, I'm just looking at the opportunity for the strangles into that. And the way it's already rallying up, people are already getting excited. I mean, I probably, looking back, should have set that up today. I was a bit of a lazy trader today. I didn't want to overtrade a low volume market environment, but NVIDIA over 936 actually was approaching 960. I gave that call out in the Discord members. I was like, this is a really bullish signal, even though this market is moving very slowly. I hate trading into slow melt ups like today. But even though I trade calls into CPI just based off the price action beforehand, but this looks like it could, if over 960, you're looking at 1,000 even before earnings. I mean, that type of confidence into it might give you the same signal that the confidence in the CPI report gave you as well. I still would caution against going one-sided into something that can move $200 against you, unless you are spending, of course, managing your risk by the amount of allocation that you put into the play. You know, if you want to play it like a crazy lotto and maybe you only throw $100 out of it on it and go $250 out of the money, chances are this will be one of those earnings where that could actually work pretty well. You know, check that IV, make sure it's not at like 500%. Don't be like all these GameStop noobs that don't know how to look at an option chain and understand that. I think those hit yesterday. They were at like 700%, and I got people DMing me and posting in Discord. So we're going to short GME with puts, right? I'm like, yeah, if you're want to get blown out, you might as well just Venmo me instead. Just consider that money gone. It doesn't matter if it goes in your favor. You got it. Yeah, these premiums are going to get sucked to oblivion, into a black hole. But yeah, so yeah, there's probably some big opportunities for this earnings play and just long term. Man, I want more Dell. I want some NVIDIA. I'm bag holding some SMCI and I'm itching for more. I'm looking at AMD. I like them. I have some Intel, even though it's kind of shafting me right now.
I'd stay out of Intel still.
I telling you, man, I caught the knife. It's not one of my core positions, so it isn't really hurting me that much.
Good.
Yeah. But I caught the knife and it went right through my hand and then stuck me in the foot on the way down. That's how I'm feeling about that one. You know, but I know the bear case. I know you don't like them, but I still I see the price where it's at. I don't think this company is going away. I think they're trying to make some competitive chips as well. I think there's still some money maybe be made in there, or if they can hit the manufacturing side, I think they can find a way. They might be able to find a way to save themselves.
I just find it like such a challenge for Intel. So they're in the process of ramping up their 20A, move to 18A, and move down the value chain to 7 and 5 nanometer. And I just have such a problem with Intel because as they're catching up to these advanced semiconductors that NVIDIA is pumping out and AMD is pumping out, they're trying to acquire their business to be the contract chip manufacturer for them. And I just find it so hard to believe that they're going to be successful in selling that they have a firewall. These guys can't talk to these guys. We're not going to steal your IP and all this stuff. It's like if you have Taiwan Semi right around the corner that can do it for you just as accessibly, why would you go to a competitive chip designer to do it for you? It just doesn't make sense to me. Like I can see Intel doing the commoditized low power analog chips. I can see that happening, but there's no value in that. That's shit that we exported out to China because, it makes no money. There's no margins in it. The money's in these high powered H200 chips that NVIDIA is going to drop. So I just have a hard time seeing Intel chip foundries or whatever they call that subunit now, I just have a hard time seeing it being successful in attaining third party contracts. They can certainly catch up with their own chip production, sure. Whether they stick to the timeline, I still see that as a challenge. They've already fallen behind on their timeline, and they keep reiterating the same story, just different period. It's like, I just kind of lost faith in Intel and their ability to, pull their ass out of this hole. They're a great company. They've historically been a phenomenal company. I just don't think that they're positioned to compete in this market how they envision it successfully. Unless they completely separate out the foundry business, unless they completely separate it out. No umbrella, just a completely independent entity that has no connection to Intel. Unless they do that, like they're toting that they're going to make it a separate legal entity. I mean, carve that fucker out, put it over here, and just there's no communication other than sales and purchases.
I mean, that's what you got to do. But I mean, the play there is like a geopolitical diversification, something like, I've also been panicking because, obviously the reason they were king of phones and king of their tech and such an efficient company was these, very perfect supply chains that are now disrupted by geopolitical turmoil and from a 250,000 foot view, we have a very nice rules-based system, and then you have Russia invade Ukraine, and then you have China infringing on Taiwan or potentially, and also I can bat events with India, and also with this turmoil in the Middle East, it seems like if you even use, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but one of the things that I was kind of in the back of my mind is I remember the CEI uses a cyclical trend, economics trend, to also determine what years are going to be likely big wars or outbreaks in wars. And that usually right now is on at the end of an 8-year cycle. So either 2025 or 2026, the expectation would be war. If you're looking at that cycle, there should be some mass chaos. So there's a few other ones that, kind of ironically are also falling around the same time frame as well. Ray Dalio's theories put us at some sort of, major geopolitical turmoil on a grand scale around the same period of time. But as a trader, I also put a lot of that out of my mind, and I just look at the stock chart and say, "Wee, I see the cliff, but I'm not there yet." So, but I think if something like that does happen, I mean, that's Intel's edge. It's like, hey, we are giving you a path. What we're doing is providing the value we provide is the assurance plan that we can compete on an international level if you do get cut off from Taiwan, or there's some sort of blockade or turmoil, like you can create that pivot. And if that happens, and you look at where the stock price is, if it happens, I'm not saying it's the most likely thing, but I have to throw some money at this thing. It's like it's like a 6 PDE ratio or something. It's crazy cheap right now.
There is the real potential of geopolitical risk, and
yeah, I mean,
I've mentioned that. We've mentioned that multiple times.
Yeah, we definitely have. Yeah, and you've also been very in tune to that. So, and I mean, your theories and everything, you're so right. That's the reason the stock's been beaten down. That's there's a lot of people, even I, have been burned, try to come in and buy dips on this, then I have to get back out and I break even, and I keep trying to come in on this as it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But yeah, I am keeping that in the back of my mind, and that's why I'm eating some pain this time, and I'm looking at this price. So, what do you think about that?
I'd put them in a wait and see category. Like as far as their business, as far as operations go, that's a very much wait and see criteria. I want to see them ship those 20As out, get developing and producing those 18As and, catch up at least. Because again, they have great technology. They're a great semiconductor firm, but they just cannot keep a timeline. I want to see the results before I start getting interested in investing in their shares.
Right.
And I mean, I'll be full frontal on this, full disclosure. I did invest in them, and I did, what is it? Knife fell through my hand, jabbed me on the toe a
Yeah.
couple years back. They were a value play, paid a good dividend for a tech company. And I thought, hey, Patrick Gelsinger, he did wonders for VMware. And now they're part of, I want to say, Broadcom.
Yeah.
And, if he can make VMware a great company, he can certainly go back to Intel after, what was it, like an 18-year tenure of being an engineer and designer and whatever else he did for them. He can turn the company around. And, I think it's just too big of a ship to turn around to steer. It's like, elephants just don't fly. Intel is that giant elephant that it's reached its parabolic peak and it's on the slow decline. Now, granted, you mentioned that there could be major geopolitical risk if China were to inch over. And I swear to God, Biden, I have words about this guy, but he is such a two-faced motherfucker when it comes to Taiwan and China. On one hand, he's supportive of Taiwan's independence. On the other, he's supportive of China taking over Taiwan. And it's like, which is it? Because if you want to secure supply chains, we need to protect Taiwan with every fucking missile we have, or we lose literally or virtually all of our high-powered compute. Like, we cannot spin up foundries fast enough to risk Taiwan being taken over by China in the next 2 years. The foundry takes, what, 2-3 years to build?
Yeah.
And then you have to get the machines in, which take God knows how long, a year, 2 years to put in. I'm sure those are well in advance ordered. So those should be, ready to go. And then you have to, staff those places. We don't have the headcount. We don't have the capacity of employees to take those jobs. It's not a fucking janitor job where you go learn how to sweep and there you go. I mean, this is a 4-year plus 4 2-year masters type of deal where you need to, be a pretty smart dude to go and work one of these machines. And we just don't have the staffing capacity. Taiwan Semi has raised its concerns multiple times when building out their chip foundries in Arizona. And that's been a big impediment for them in attaining grants to build these. They're like, hey, we're ready to go, but we don't have the manpower to, actually go in and run these machines. So, they've been kind of at a standstill. And I think last couple months, they acquired part of the CHIPS Act grants to actually get the go ahead and, put some capital to work. So there's movement, but just a time frame and the lofty expectations of being able to manufacture these high powered chips that we need. It's not a want, it's a need, for aerospace and defense, for AI compute, for supercomputers, for quantum computing, whether it's for use or cyber defense against, these major nation states like China and Russia. It's shit we need. And the fact that,
you cannot.
The idea that it can just be turned on, as he would put it, like a fucking oil well. What was that back in 2020? Just turn on the faucet. It's not that easy. Oil's not that easy. Semiconductors are definitely not that easy. So I just think like the risk is real, that if there were a skirmish, as you mentioned, if there was an actual skirmish, that we could be in the dark ages. Maybe not in the dark ages, but we could realize some significant supply chain risks that may not be abated until, I don't know, 4 or 5 so years out. I mean, we can migrate Taiwanese fab guys out here, fab employees, engineers to, come live in the States, get their green card and stuff. But I
Yeah,
mean,
we gotta
who
expedite
knows?
that. They're probably, which we should be getting something sensible on that end where we need more skilled workers. And hopefully we'll be getting some of those over. And I'm sure there'll be some political pushback on that, but it's such a necessity from multiple angles, not just in this industry.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. I did see Taiwan Semi is they have a deal with Purdue for your program. So it's not like it's not happening, but
we need
for your
more of it.
program,
Yeah.
starting today for your program.
Yeah.
So in 4 years, we'll have employees.
Yeah.
We'll have junior employees, not senior. We'll have
Yeah.
fresh grads, intern employees
Yeah.
to run these facilities.
Yeah.
Like, let's be realistic here. So I worked in the staffing industry for a decade before moving to finance. Let's be realistic here. You don't just walk out of college and now you're a expert at something.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's be realistic. This ain't going to be an overnight deal. It's not a turn the faucet on some we have semiconductors. This is probably a decade long project that
And by then, who knows where robotics will be at?
who knows where AI is going to be. Who knows where Taiwan's going to be and China's going to
Man,
be. And
generative AI scares the crap out of me because it might be good enough to trade, and that I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm nervous on that one. You got to get as much money in the market now while you can, because I tell you, there could easily be a chance that in a decade that you better just be in it, because I don't know how I'm going to outthink an AI. You're gonna have to. I just don't even know how you would. Yeah, I don't want to think about it. Next topic.
well, you already have high frequency traders. You already have your Citadels and Two Sigmas and
Yeah, but
Renaissance.
those are still people who are behind the scenes on those things,
Oh,
and
you're talking about sentient
I'm talking about a
programs writing
sentient.
programs.
Yes, it's the one doing the trades. It's the one analyzing all the real time news in real time. Even already with the democratization of democratization of uh information, where you don't really need to have a Bloomberg portal to be a great trader to get all the data, etc. There has been, I've noticed at least, and I think I've heard other traders comment on the fact that you kind of have to front run, like CPI. That move happens so fast. When you're talking about FOMC, he says something, the move is so fast. The only real way you kind of make money off stuff like this is you have to come in beforehand. You have to take the risk. You have to make the bet, do as much research as you can, and come in beforehand, because these algos will price it in so fast. But with generative AI, you kind of have to wonder, with it being so good at being able to predict what you're going to say next, and probably have access to literally everything, like, you kind of have to wonder if it's just going to price, oh, I'll price that in a week ahead or 2 weeks ahead before it's even on your mind. I know
Yeah.
most of us, even in the professional level, we're only thinking about 2 weeks ahead of time for short-term traders. For some things, we might have a macro framework that extends maybe a few years in advance, but when it comes to our trades, if you're pricing us out weeks in advance, fuck. That means you have to stretch your horizons like 10, 20 years, and we suck at that. It's like literally what we're the worst at. where there's no way, like, everyone sucks at that. Yeah, I mean, that'll be really interesting. Some people I've talked to some traders, and they think it'll make trading in the short term better, because when there is news, there'll be even bigger reactions, because everyone will be still
More fluidity.
one-sided.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so that it'll be better actually. But we'll see, because it might get better at pricing that into the options market.
It
So
could.
yeah,
And I mean, I have
yeah.
some thoughts on that too, though. Like, so I remember reading a report years ago on Google's self-driving vehicle. And the idea was, the self-driving vehicle gets to a stop sign, a four-way stop. And you have a person driving the car in one of the other lanes waiting for you to go, but they keep inching forward. The Google car isn't going to go because it's following the rules verbatim. It's not going to go because that other car may go and put that vehicle at risk of a collision. So you're still, no matter how you cut it, AI is still rules based. It's just so advanced and uncomprehendable by people like me that don't have a computer and data science and degree to know how the back end works. But it's still a program, it's still a man-made program, and until it can fully make the same mistakes of the human genome, like people fuck up, CEOs fuck up, until they can do that, until people are no longer running companies, until employees are just robots and everything is perfect, I don't think that's something to be too concerned about quite yet. Like, I mean, you might have to adjust your models, you might have to adjust your expectations. Like you said, you might have, instead of a 5% move on some news, you're going to have a 20% move on some news. I mean, valuations, bear in mind, valuations are just an estimate of the intrinsic value of a company. It's not, it's not the actual value. It's just an estimate. Financial forecasts, those are all estimates based on estimates. And I mean, like, for example, if I'm forecasting out 2026, I still have the rest of 24, all of 25, and then 26 to get to. 2026 is like a third degree derivative off of 2025 figures and the rest of 2024 figures. So anything can happen between now and then. The company could, lose production and suddenly go bankrupt, or it could just have a phenomenal couple years like NVDA did in the last year and quadruple their data center revenue. Like, who would have seen that happen back in 2020? I mean, it was a hype stock, but who could have forecast they would have increased their data center revenue by 4 times? Like, nobody.
No, true. Yeah, even I think, there's a lot of truth in that.
So it's all estimates. It's all trying to, going back to your CPI trade, it's all based on historical events that lead up to that one event and what your expectation is based on the data you've gathered. So like what I think you're trying to
well, I'm also talking on like a 10-20 year time frame. Like I'm thinking that I 5 years ago when I was doing this, I was like, oh, I'll just do this for the rest of my life. Now sometimes I sit here and I think maybe.
what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to get at is, you don't know what CPI is going to be. You didn't know what it was going to be yesterday, but based on all those little tidbits and things you've read throughout the last month, based on trends, based on stuff I write and send to you, based on all these different data points that you've observed and absorbed, and that just might be floating around your head, just not connecting the dots to. That's what makes up your rationale for how you're going to play that. It's not just throwing darts in the dark. You have all this data to create a case for what you did yesterday and today. You just don't think about it that way. But that's what was actually happening behind the scenes inside, that gray matter. Yeah. I mean, nobody really knows what they're doing in finance. We just pretend like we know. We make up big words and try to look smarter than the next guy and make them look stupid. And
well, if you're a macroeconomics economist, if you're a macroeconomist, that's definitely what you do.
Oh, you're absolutely a dumb shit if you're a macroeconomist. Your job is to try to be right, but 99% of the time you're wrong.
Yeah. Your job is to care more about sounding smart than making money. Yeah, anyways,
that is the facts. Them's the facts.
All right. Well, sounds like a good place to wrap it up. Everyone, thanks for watching the podcast. This is going to end up being a longer one. So I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you check out the links down below. You got to check out Monty's Peach Pit Substack. I mean, the best research. There's a reason he's one of the best guys at Seeking Alpha. He's got a large professional career and being an analyst, the track record, everything. It's all there. All right. This is the real deal. He's one of the best. He's one of the best members of the team as well. And if you want to hang out with all of us, join the Discord. Make sure to check out that link down below to see the trading and investing community where we're always talking in real time about our trades. You could talk to me, ask me whatever questions you want. You can even sometimes catch Monty in there if he wants to grace you with his presence.
Be sure to tag me because I'm busy reading that nerdy shit.
So anyways, thank you all for tuning in. You guys all have a good night.
Y'all take care.